shut the door right in their faces, locked myself in the room, and only then burst into tears. At that moment, Dad was at the store buying some clothes for the hot weather. I immediately texted him to come home urgently and described in the message what had happened so I wouldn't have to explain it all later. I even attached a photo of the burned passport, and soon after he was home. I didn't leave the room or open the door, just let him figure it out himself. I knew from his yelling that he was back. He started screaming at Susan and Nadia as soon as he walked in, calling them psychopaths and ordering them out of the house because he would never allow them to treat his daughter that way. He said he had already made a mistake once when he ignored their first horrible behavior towards me, and he wasn't about to repeat it just because he once loved Susan. I heard Susan and Nadia putting on an act downstairs, crying and trying to convince him that the passport supposedly burned because I left it on the dresser with a lit cigarette. That was such a stupid lie. At that moment, I decided to intervene and went downstairs to set things straight. Dad knows perfectly well I don't even smoke, so their excuse was total nonsense. When I walked in, he said I came just in time because he was about to do something to balance everything out. I thought he was going to call the police, but instead, he did something even better. He went into his office and came back with some papers. I had no idea what they were, but from Nadia's face, it was obvious they were important. Within a minute, Dad tore the documents right in front of Susan. Later, I found out they were student loan documents he had planned to co-sign for Nadia so she could attend college, since her mother had no savings. By destroying them, Dad made sure that just as I had lost something important, Nadia would lose something to Dad after that. He ordered Susan and Nadia to leave the house. They begged him to reconsider, almost on their knees, but he stood firm. Within an hour, they were gone. Now they won't stop messaging me, especially Nadia. She's begging me to talk to Dad and convince him to help her with the student loan, claiming she'd do anything to make up for what happened. She swears she didn't know he was going to rip up the documents. She says they were just hurt that Dad didn't think to include them in the trip, and they felt like outsiders in the family. I reminded her that she and her mother had taken many trips together, without me. So why is it unfair that I wanted to spend my 18th birthday alone with my father? Especially since she has her own biological dad, even if he lives in another state. My mom died years ago, and this trip was meant to honor her, but they wouldn't even allow me that. So now, expecting me to help them is beyond unfair. What they did to me was cruel, and what happened to Nadia in the end was nothing but justice. She's lost the right to ask me for anything. Still, she keeps writing to me. I've tried blocking her, but something always stops me. Maybe because it doesn't seem entirely fair to plan a 10-day trip abroad just for me and Dad without thinking of Susan or Nadia. But then again, they usually only go away for 2 to 3 days locally, and this was something special for us. So here I am asking, am I a bad person for wanting to go on an international trip with my dad for 10 days without my stepmom and stepsister? Before we continue, I suggest you write your opinion in the comments. Personally, I don't think there's even a question here. The situation is clear. The daughter is not at fault at all. She acted absolutely right. As for Susan and Nadia, they are just awful people. Yes, I can understand where their behavior comes from, but that doesn't excuse them. If anything, it makes it worse. Terrible behavior, terrible parenting, nothing more to add. I only feel sorry for the dad because he ended up loving a woman who turned out to be toxic. But let's move on first. Many asked why we didn't call the cops when they destroyed my passport. The truth is, we didn't want a legal mess. At that moment, it didn't even occur to me. I was in shock and panicking. Even if we had called, they would have probably ruled it an accident, and it would have led nowhere. Second, many wondered why I'm not in college yet. I graduated high school last year and took a gap year to figure out my path. I worked in a few places, got some experience, and decided to go into journalism. I even interned at different editorial offices. Now I've started applying to colleges. Thankfully, my grandparents are covering my tuition, so neither Dad nor I need to worry about money. Nadia, on the other hand, had to rely on a loan, and that's why Dad was planning to co-sign. Now, instead of going to India, we stayed home because I no longer had a passport. Dad and I spent the day watching old movies we used to love. It actually helped. I also blocked Susan and Nadia. They betrayed me for no reason. So whatever happens to them now, they deserve it. 4 days later, Dad came home from work and told me he had filed for divorce. We had a deep talk, one we should have had long ago. He admitted he had been selfish, thinking only of himself, but now he realized it hurt us both. He finally understood Susan was not the right person for him. He apologized for everything I had gone through because of his choices. We hugged. To me, he's still the best father I could ever ask for. Yes, he made mistakes, but for every mistake there were countless things he did right. I will always love him. It looks like Susan officially received the divorce papers today. Dad came home early and locked himself in his office, yelling on the phone. Later, he told me Susan had called and started threatening him. She said if he divorced her, she'd ruin him with lies and false accusations. Dad recorded the call and warned her that if she tried, he would use the recording against her. Susan tried to twist it, accusing him of blackmail, but Dad stood firm. He told her if she dared lie or defame him during the divorce process, he'd make sure her life was destroyed instead. He said by her voice, he could tell she was scared. The divorce process began, and Dad promised me that as soon as it was over, we would finally go to India. A couple of weeks later, the divorce was finalized, and Dad won big. Susan got nothing. She tried to demand spousal support, settlements, even child support for her adult daughter, but it didn't work. Everything stayed the same. We kept what was ours, and she kept what was hers. Now Dad and I are preparing for our long-awaited trip to India. I already have my new passport, and I couldn't be happier after everything. I'm just grateful. Grateful to my dad, grateful to my grandparents, and grateful that we can finally move on with our lives without Susan and Nadia.